Well, the process that everyone knows about is the conclave, and that is when the cardinals who are under 80 meet in Sistine Chapel in a room closed with a key. That's what the word conclave means. And they keep voting until someone gets, in the beginning it's 2/3, and then if that doesn't work, then it's a majority plus one. That's what everyone knows about. But actually a lot of the discernment happened prior to the conclave, and it's already started. You have a period of mourning for the Pope, which will include his funeral. But during that time, you'll have meetings of the cardinals, and all of them, the ones that are over 80 as well, the emeriti. And they will have these congregations, these meetings in which they'll discuss the issues of the church, the contemporary challenges, and the kind of characteristics that would be needed for someone to be the successor of St. Peter. The cardinals are basically bishops who have been called by the Bishop of Rome to assist him in his universal ministry. Okay, and so they're incarnated. That's one of where we get the word from. They're incarnated in the church, in the Diocese of Rome, the different churches. If you go to Rome and you go to churches, if you look, you go inside and you sort of look around, you'll see a picture of a cardinal. That's that person's church. So they're all incarnated in the Diocese of Rome, and they do a number of things, but the most important thing they do is to elect the Pope. The only exception there is when if they're over 80. There was a movie recently, Conclave, that part of the conceit of the plot was that a cardinal who was appointed in secret was part of ended up getting elected Pope, was in the conclave itself. That actually can't happen. That's a poetic license. Exciting, but not according to the rules. They could be forever, I guess, theoretically, but in modern times, they're really, if they go over 5 days, it would really be unusual. They almost always go, what happens is when they gather together, they take a vote, which really comes out of their discussions and the kind of discussions and thinking that goes on before they go into the conclave. So they take a vote, and then they see, where people are, and then they wait a little while, take another vote, and that tells the cardinals of whether there is someone who keeps rising in the votes. But what happens is, say somebody gets 40 votes, and then in the next vote, they get 40 votes or 42 votes. Normally, that person is not going to be a contender, and then the voting continues until someone just keeps rising, and then they'll rise enough to become Pope. And that, again, I would be really surprised if it took more than, let's say, 3 or 4 days at the most. The tradition of how someone becomes a cardinal is normally tied to a diocese, a big diocese like New York or LA or Munich or something like that. They would have, whoever became the archbishop of that place would become a cardinal. Francis broke with that tradition. And therefore we have some dioceses, Los Angeles would be one of them, that's had a cardinal for a long time but doesn't have a cardinal now, right? And that was an intentional decision, not about Los Angeles, but rather to make sure that you created a college of cardinals that reflected the universal church, right? If you think of it, Francis, the first pope born outside of Europe since the 800s, so he was very aware of the fact that the church has to cover the entire globe, and therefore the folks who elect the next pope need to come from all over the place. Well, one of the consequences of that is that you would have a cardinal from a church, quite far from Rome, with not a lot of money. And so those men would not have traveled many times to Rome. They would have been there at least to become a cardinal, but maybe not so much after that. And so what will happen, this is probably the first time in all of church history, that you'll have a significant number of the cardinals that would not know each other. I mean, the Catholic Church, in a way, is a small world, or has been. A lot of Italians, a lot of Europeans, a lot of people who are always in Rome, and so they got to know one another. That's not going to be the case this time. One of the things I was reading today in the Italian press was that may increase this fact that I just said might increase the influence of some of the older cardinals, even the ones who are over 80, that have been around a longer time. Their influence may, although they're not going to be able to vote, they will maybe play a greater part in the deliberations, simply because they'll have a lot of newcomers to the College of Cardinals. The question of every conclave is the same. Do we want to continue the way of the Pope who just died, or do we want to go in a different direction? Rarely does it happen that they go in a radically different direction. There's a lot of positive feelings about the Pope who just died, and so there's an emphasis on the positive. But nonetheless, it's often the case that they're like, we like this parts of the recently deceased Pope, but there were things about other popes maybe that we like. And so with Francis, you have to think of St. John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Francis. Each of them had different styles of being the Pope, different topics that they emphasized. And so I suspect, the easy money would be on someone who's going to combine the strengths of all of those three men. Well, there are two ways. One is the famous way of the smoke, right? What they do is they have a vote. If the vote does not produce a pope, they put chemicals in this stove, and you get black smoke. Okay. I've actually seen that myself. When there's a successful election, you get the white smoke. Problem is that the white smoke isn't always discernible. For one thing, it's white, although they put chemicals in it as well. And so what they do is they ring the bell. There's a bell that rings at St. Peter's when the Pope is elected. And so although the smoke is a signal, so to speak, it's really the bell that sort of, it's always a little confusing. So when they ring the bell, everyone looks at, that's it, we have a new Pope.